Hey there, how's it going? My name's Feign the Opossum, and I may have already done things in the wrong order. I'm going to talk about the 3 Sonic the Hedgehog Story Comics in this video, but unfortunately, there's a decent chance that the first volume actually released a couple of weeks before Sonic 1 did. And there's also this fictional interview that I found after I started writing this episode, which kinda counts toward the list, and yeah, I know, it only took one video for me to deviate from the chronology, but it was totally by design. Sorta. I can explain, but it's kind of a long story. It probably goes without saying, but Sonic the Hedgehog didn't just spontaneously manifest out of the ether and onto store shelves in June of 1991. I mentioned in the last video that loads of attempts were made as part of a contest at Sega of Japan to find a mascot that could rival Nintendo's Mario. I'm honestly not certain if this was explicitly part of that contest or not, but in 1989, Naoto Oshima pitched this game concept called Twin Stars, where, among other things, these two individuals would move fast and run through loop-de-loops. Sound familiar? While these characters wouldn't go much further, the gameplay ideas proved intriguing, so development went ahead with Yuji Naka as programmer while the search for a protagonist continued. We actually have footage of this gameplay and the game physics being programmed in February of 1990, believe it or not. Aw, isn't embryonic Sonic just the cutest? Or would this be, spermatozoic Sonic? In actuality, this rabbit character was the original choice for the protagonist. He'd use his ears to pick things up and throw them at enemies. However, this kinda hampered the whole speed thing that the game was going for, so they scrapped the idea and instead chose to have the character roll into a ball to attack. Since rabbits don't exactly do that, Oshima had to go and devise a new character, which led to Mr. Hedgehog, later renamed Sonic. Alright, this one here. This one's the embryo one. Yeah. It's worth noting, too, that this guy was also a possible option for a new character, and while he wasn't picked as the protagonist, he would end up proving popular enough to evolve into Dr. Eggman. Hey there! It's me, just from about 2 months after I recorded the rest of this video. Sorry to interject. I really hope not to make a habit out of this, but, yeah, I should probably clear something up. It turns out there are actually conflicting stories on how all of this early development stuff went down. You see, Naka claims that he came up with the spin attack idea himself when he was in high school, and therefore, the rolling into a ball mechanic could only have arisen after he joined the project. However, the graphic I showed before is of a move called Wonder Hedgehog from what was actually Oshima's second proposal for the game. This proposal was allegedly, and inconveniently for Naka's aforementioned narrative, created before Naka joined the project. Now, one may conclude from this, that means Yuji Naka lied, or perhaps from a less hostile view, was mistaken! To which I say, maybe not, though? The problem is, Oshima was also there for the same interview where Naka gives his story and even seems to corroborate it, so I have no idea. The correct answer is probably somewhere in this mire, and I know that most people probably wouldn't care if some third-rate netizen like myself glossed over it, but I figured I should point out the discrepancy for the sake of completeness. Anyway, carry on. In the early stages, Oshima would continue using concepts from his Twin Stars proposal, like this antagonist character named 13, though pretty much all of it would get nixed. Sonic was also, for a bit, given a girlfriend named Madonna, a human girlfriend. Perhaps it's for the best this one didn't last long. As for why Eggman's dressed like he wants to break all known laws of aviation, I don't know. Oh, Sonic was also temporarily the lead singer in a rock act called the Sonic the Hedgehog Band, alongside drummer Mock the Rabbit, guitarist Sharps the Parakeet, bassist Max the Monkey, and keyboardist Vector the Crocodile? Like, find the computer room, Vector the Crocodile? That's kinda neat, actually. This stuff would all end up getting cut, though, because of, time constraints. Remember that, it'll be important later. It's not like most of this would be known to the public, however. While development officially began in April of 1990, when President and CEO of Sega of Japan, Hayao Nakayama, was basically bribed with a plushie, it wouldn't debut to the public until June at that year's Tokyo Toy Show. There's not a whole lot known about this build of the game. I mean, people still debate about whether or not it was even playable. While there aren't many images of the game at the event itself, a few magazines briefly covered it, giving us at least some insight as to what this original build may have looked like. Yeah, as you can see, there were some changes, but even at this point, magazines were treating this fledgling Sonic with a cautious optimism. There was also quite a bit of dialogue outside of Japan as the game continued development and was shown off at Western shows and expos, but I'll save that for a later time. In a lot of ways, I found the Japanese image of Sonic stands apart from the Sonic we got in the West. From what I can tell, the magazines Beat Mega Drive and Mega Drive Fan would serve as the main Japanese sources of info for Sonic. Though there was this newsletter-esque thing called Sega Players Enjoy Club, or SPEC, that ran a piece on Dreams Come True. They were a rather well-known J-pop band, consisting of Miwa Yoshida as lead vocalist, Masato Nakamura on bass, and Takahiro Nishikawa on keyboards. Spec was giving away free tickets to one of their concerts, and what? Sonic? Yep, this issue served as a way to announce that band member Nakamura would be writing the music for the upcoming Sonic game. Sega even went so far as to sponsor the band's whole tour for their third studio album, Wonder 3, with Sonic getting plastered on their equipment truck. Anyway, Spec also had this fictional interview with Sonic written by Tsukasa Mori under the nickname S. Remo to tie into the Dreams Come True stuff, which might just be the first real time the public got to see Sonic's personality. I gotta say, I find Sonic's insistence on using English, absolutely hilarious. Don't worry, buddy, you'll get it eventually. We also find out that Sonic considers himself to be an adventurer, and that he's from Christmas Island. Also, I'm pretty sure the Christmas Island thing never ends up getting explained or expanded on, even though people still cite it as Sonic's official backstory. I don't know. There's also this page with this little blurb here that mentions, Chuck Yeager and some other guy? What does this have to do with anything? So here's the thing. At some point during development, after the Sonic the Hedgehog band was introduced, but before November of 1990, both Naoto Oshima and Hirokazu Yasuhara, who is actually like a super important guy, felt that Sonic needed a sort of backstory to try and artificially create this sense of nostalgia that they felt other famous mascots have. They ended up creating two parallel backstories. A fairy tale one that we see in the manuals for the games themselves, as well as the spec interview, and a real-world one that was meant to explain how the fairy tale backstory was conceived, among other things. It's one of those story-within-a-story type situations, though the real-world part ends up getting kind of dropped and forgotten over the years. This blurb is one of the only bits of published Sonic media that actually acknowledges it. Volume 3 of the story comic is one of the few other things that brings it up, so I'll go into more detail about it when we get there. Whew, that was a lot. Oh, right. So why did I do a video on Sonic 1 before the story comics? Why did I yak on and on about all that development stuff in this video before the story comics? And, what are the story comics? Well, with Sonic's debut game fast approaching and slated for July 26, 1991 in Japan, the magazine Mega Drive Fan, I mentioned before that they'd been covering the game's development this whole time, released the Sonic the Hedgehog Story Comic, a 3-volume manga meant to depict the plot of the game packaged with their July, August, and September 1991 issues. Since they were probably written and drawn a while in advance, these manga ended up preserving a few, shall we say, artifacts from development that never made it to the final game. However, the issues of the magazine actually released a month earlier than what their covers say, which means Volume 1 reached the public in Japan before Sonic 1 got released in North America. But since they all got re-released later for people that weren't subscribed to Mega Drive Fan anyway, I figured I could fudge things a bit and go through all 3 story comics at the same time. Hey there! Me again. Well, me from about 2 months in the future relative to the rest of this video. Again. Look. I actually made a pretty egregious error in my first video that I need to rectify here. I even made it earlier in this video. See this? June 23rd, 1991? Yeah, that's wrong. Turns out, back in 1991, most video games didn't really have strict release dates. It just wasn't feasible to coordinate and control every retailer once they received the physical games. Now, I already knew this, but I'd never really questioned why Sonic the Hedgehog had always been associated with a particular date. It's just everyone parrots this June 23rd, 1991. However, from what I've recently found, this June 23rd business has only been around since this timeline in Sonic Jam, so like 1997, I guess. Wait, what is it? The Tracks of Spin? What is it even? No, save it for a later video. Anyway, there is evidence in the form of Usenet posts archived on Google Groups that Sonic 1 reached players as far back as June 11th, 1991. And that's not just a fluke. Loads of people got the game between then and the 23rd. So let me just... there we go. Now, that doesn't necessarily make the June 23rd date worthless. It's just not super clear what, if any, importance the date actually has. Even still, this doesn't change the fact that the first volume of the story comic released earlier than the game. It's just now it's only by like 3 days. But my earlier comment about the whole re-release thing still stands. So in the words of my original recorded self, totally sound logic, I'm sure you'll agree. I have no good excuse for the spec interview, though. I just completely missed that. Anyway, now we can finally crack open one of these things and, oh. Right. I don't know Japanese. I haven't brought this up before now, but I, don't know how to read or speak Japanese. It'd be neat to learn, but I've yet to do so. To compensate, I've abused an unholy union of Google Lens and ChatGPT. Everything I've shown in Japanese up to this point was translated in this way. It's true that some Sonic-related manga have seen fan translations over the years, but I figured I should work as closely to the original stories as possible, just to dodge other people's translation biases. If you find anything wrong or inaccurate, please let me know in the comments. I'm doing my best to double-check, but I'm also aware that my technique isn't particularly orthodox. Huh? Oh, sorry. I'm just waiting a few moments in case any other digressions or explanations come to mind. And nope. Alright, buckle up, buckos. Now we'll dive into the story comics. It seems that the ones that came packaged with Mega Drive Fan had special covers, as opposed to these less fancy ones that the re-releases got. Ah, see, you can tell it's not canon because his arms are blue. And disjointed. Each issue also starts with this page where Sonic introduces the story and recaps the previous issues. Given that the first one, Dr. Eggman's Challenge, doesn't have much to sum up, it just explains that the game will be available soon, so this manga serves as a sneak peek at its plot. Anyway, our story truly opens with a view of the unknown, unseen, and idyllically peaceful South Island, which is immediately invaded by Eggman. Oh yeah, he has a sort of catchphrase throughout this whole thing. Don't worry about it. His big goal is to build a fortress for world domination. I guess a moving island that no one else knows about is a pretty good option for that sort of thing. However, South Island comes with another surprise perk. One of Eggman's robots detects a Chaos Emerald, the legendary super substance of dreams. With that kind of energy, he'll be able to boil the world's largest egg. That's your lifelong dream? What's the whole world domination thing for, then? Is that some kind of side gig? That's a heck of a side gig. And what even lays an egg that large? Is this the backstory for Sonic Superstars? Meanwhile, in Green Hill Zone, Sonic's in the middle of a rock concert. Yep, a rock concert on the unseen, unknown, and peaceful South Island. It seems like, at least when this manga was written, the Sonic the Hedgehog band had not yet been removed from Sonic 1. Also, it seems like this artist tried to give Sonic fangs, but I guess the design didn't catch on. Truly, our greatest loss. Anyway, Sonic starts working the crowd, getting everyone excited, and... What? Does Madonna know about this, or had she gotten the axe by this point? Oh, and this is a small detail, but the kind of music Sonic's band plays is described as tatanori in the original Japanese. The word means something along the lines of vertical movement. Basically, it's fast-paced and exciting music with a strong driving beat as opposed to the slower and more groovy rhythms of yokonori, or horizontal moving music. And you know, that actually makes a lot of sense for Sonic. Ah, and we get to see the other members of the band in a brief cameo, too. See, there's Sharps and Mach. Vector's just barely in frame there, wait, where's Max? Is he not Really? These guys are barely in anything, and you're just gonna short shrift the bassist in the band's very first published appearance? Come on, Sega! Justice for Max the Monkey! Anyway, the concert doesn't even get a chance to start as Eggman and his construction robots launch an ambush. Now, in all fairness, it's not like Eggman actually attacks anyone. He's just barging in to dig, presumably for the emeralds. Okay, he does take captives after they insult him. Sonic ain't having none of that, though, and after this sick hero shot, and markedly less sick grammar, don't worry, buddy, you'll get it eventually, Sonic rolls into a few more spin attacks and makes short work of the construction robots. Eggman then brings out his wrecking ball, which both ties into the construction stuff from earlier and the actual boss fight from Act 3 of Green Hill. I don't know, I just think it's cool. It really doesn't pose much of a threat to Sonic at all, though. Jeez, man, why are you looking at him like that? What are you gonna do? Eat him? In the end, Eggman's sent packing, and the concert starts back up as if the surrounding terrain wasn't just torn up by a complete stranger to this supposed unknown and unseen island. And then there's this meta joke here at the end about Eggman playing through Sonic 1 to practice for his future encounters with Sonic. Hey, at least he's got good taste in levels. It's Spring Yard Zone. I really like the art in this. The action scenes especially feel super dynamic and exciting, and I love how the artist gave Sonic so much character. It's a big shame that, as far as I'm aware, the artist's name isn't known. The story can be a bit strange, but there are so many things here that ended up being altered or cut before the final game's release that honestly I'm not all that bothered by it. I'm just along for the ride. The second volume is titled Clash, South Island, and it more closely mirrors what we see in the final game. I only just noticed Eggman's not wearing gloves. I don't know why, but I'm uncomfortable now. Anyway, Sonic quickly sums up Volume 1, and then... Wait, hold on. Eggman's trying to make money from land development? I thought Eggman's whole shtick was world domination. And boiling eggs. You know, I thought these manga were supposed to make the plot for Sonic 1 less vague. Well, moving on, we begin with Eggman capturing all of the animals on South Island, convinced that he can now defeat Sonic. I didn't catch this on my first read-through, but Eggman's construction robots actually didn't have any animals in them. We only see traditional badniks appear first in Volume 2. Meanwhile, in Marble Zone, we find Sonic saving Pocky, which is his name, not his species, I guess, from this caterpillar. Oh, I see. So this Sonic can just spin attack their bodies with no problems. But when I do it, everything goes horribly wrong. How's that fair? After getting freed from his badnik confines, Picky explains Eggman's activities. Enraged, Sonic declares that he'll beat up Eggman and free everyone, despite not knowing exactly where to go. Ah, east. I should have known. What follows are a bunch of scenes that replicate notable obstacles and hazards from Marble Zone in the game. Once again, I really love the art here, and the implication that the magma balls and spikes were all set up by Eggman is rather interesting to me. Did he know Sonic would be here? Did he have them built, or did he just reactivate traps that were already in the ruins? These are the real questions that were running through my head instead of, doing anything productive. Next up, Sparkling Zone, as it was called during development, plays out much the same way, though I find it kind of weird that the comic just jumps there straight from Marble Zone. Are they just right next to each other on South Island? There's no transition. We just go straight from ruins to pinball. See, Sonic's having some problems with the blast processing too. It's not just me, guys. After getting freed from their own badniks, Ricky and Cookie, the chicken one, rather abruptly leads Sonic into Starlight Zone, where all the other animals are captured and guarded by this single valiant Uni. Yeah, Sonic ripped through half a dozen construction robots earlier. You never really stood a chance. But before Sonic can open the capsule, Eggman appears and starts the boss fight from Spring Yard Zone, only to get stuck in the ground and immediately spin attacked into oblivion. Isn't the whole point of the Spring Yard fight that his spike thing pulls up and destroys the clearly destructible floor? The ground in Starlight Zone looks like it's made of metal. What did Eggman expect would happen? Well, Eggman's lack of common sense aside, Sonic is able to save all of the animal OCs. Hey, at least this one's not a recolor, so points for creativity. However, Dr. Eggman leaves this issue off with a warning that there are still many dangerous zones to go. You do know there are only 2 zones we haven't seen yet, right? I touched on it a little before in Marble Zone, but I really like how this issue used different obstacles and gameplay mechanics from the game. Sure, some were in strange places, and it's not exactly a one-to-one adaptation, but I appreciated the effort to include the magma tsunami, bumpers, and seesaws, even with the rather fast pace of the story. It would have been easy just to show Sonic running to the right for 14 pages, but it's clear that the people who made this put some thought into it. The art in this issue was really fun too, and it was neat to see some of these places from different angles and perspectives. It really made South Island feel more dynamic. Last but not least, the third and final volume, Sonic Rampage, was released shortly after Sonic 1 actually came out in Japan. It begins with Dr. Eggman stewing over his previous defeats in, some kind of tortoise lair? I get that you want to make your lair symbolically opposite to Sonic, and Sonic is fast, something slow, but tortoise isn't exactly the most intimidating choice. Anyway, Eggman's big plan here is to use Flicky, Pecky, and Rocky to lure Sonic into a trap, and it appears to be working, as Sonic barges into Scrap Brain Zone looking for them. No, sorry again. Clockwork Zone, it's another early development name. So Sonic goes down this chute, pulled directly from the game, and finds a secret passage. And by secret passage, I mean a convenient trap from Eggman that leads straight to... Labyrinth Zone. Yeah, the observant among you may have noticed that Sonic was led straight from Spring Yard or Sparkling Zone to Starlight Zone, skipping where Labyrinth would be expected in the actual game. I'm not exactly certain why this change was made in the story comic, though I do have a couple of ideas. It's possible that this was the result of changes in development. There is evidence that Labyrinth Zone was originally supposed to be the second area of the game instead of the fourth, based on the level select screen, and the fact that, if placed earlier, the stages appear to grow increasingly industrialized, like thematically. If Labyrinth Zone's position was unclear to the story comics writers, then they may have just slotted it in at the end just to be safe. The other possibility I can see is that this is meant to reference Scrap Brain Act 3, which is pretty blatantly based on Labyrinth Zone in-game. I personally feel like the latter suggestion is more likely, given that quite a few other obstacles and mechanics from the final game were adapted pretty faithfully, but it could go either way, I don't actually know. Anyway, as one may expect from Labyrinth Zone, Sonic nearly drowns. And I guess he can't spin attack underwater? Skill issue. After getting through Labyrinth via the traditional method, luck, Sonic finally makes it to Dr. Eggman's Tortoise of Slowitude. How will Sonic manage to save his friends? I have no idea, because it happens between panels. But before we can dwell on that, we have to fit in a quick hero shot, and thus, Eggman is defeated in the exact same way as he was in Volume 1. It's like poetry, 'cause it rhymes or something. Yeah, the ending felt pretty rushed to me, with Sonic just kinda winning and peace getting restored in a matter of moments, but overall, I like the story. It's a neat glimpse into what Sonic could have been, before a lot of the finer details were more solidly defined. However, this isn't the conclusion of Volume 3. No, the last few pages include this Gaiden, or side story, which is derived from the real-world backstory that I mentioned a while ago. There were quite a few changes made from the original, though, so I'll quickly go over what Oshima and Yasuhara wrote first. Basically, Sonic's real-world origins are broken into 3 episodes, though it's not 100% clear how they relate to each other. The first talks about this fairy tale author named Mary Garnett, her unnamed husband, who was an Air Force test pilot, and their daughter, Shelley. Because his line of work kept him from coming home often, Shelley rarely got to see him, so in an effort to keep her daughter happy despite this, Mary would tell Shelley fairy tales about a hedgehog character named Sonic, who was clearly based on her father. See, his helmet would make his hair stick up, so Mary would say he looked like a hedgehog, which is kind of adorable. Presumably, one of these fairy tales involved Sonic saving South Island from Dr. Eggman. Oh, and I guess Madonna was Mary's self-insert OC? Anyway, the second episode takes place in 1947, when Chuck Yeager became the first man to break the sound barrier. Oh, fun fact, the plane that was used to do it, the Bell X-1, was built by Bell Aircraft, founded by Lawrence D. Bell, who was actually born in my hometown of Mentone, Indiana. See, here's some video I took of this Jack's Pacific Silver outside the Bell Aircraft Museum. He ended up jointly winning the Collier Trophy in 1947 alongside Chuck Yeager. I know that my connection to all this is pretty tangential, but hey, I still think it's kinda neat. So, why exactly does this mention Chuck Yeager? Well, let's see here. A few minutes earlier, another pilot, surpassed the sound barrier. Okay. Aircraft explode. Oh. Well, like I said, it's tangential. Entirely negligible, even. The development documents say that it's not certain if this now deceased mystery pilot was Mary's husband from episode 1, but regardless, he wore this Sonic emblem on the back of his flight jacket, which became the center of popular legends and stories. Ah, so that's why the logo has wings. Now, episode 3 takes place after a time skip. It's set in the 1980s. Some antique store owner named Jeff found a flight jacket with Sonic on it. He had no idea what animal Sonic was supposed to be, but he figured it'd sell to somebody, so he put it on display. Eventually, this freelance photographer named Meg, who might be Mary's granddaughter, walks in and recognizes the Sonic character from the popular stories, correctly identifying him as a hedgehog, thank you. She buys the jacket from Jeff and starts wearing it to work every day. Unfortunately, while at an airport to get pictures of an air show, the two planes collided mid-air, causing a tragic accident. Okay, this is really dark. Meg, in her infinite wisdom, decides to run toward the burning wreckage with her camera. The engine ends up exploding, though, and she nearly gets engulfed in flames. But, get this. Sonic the Hedgehog appears, actually appears, and talks her through running from the wreckage. After Sonic chastises her for not looking where she's going, Meg blacks out and wakes up in a hospital. Meg is then told that she was found on a nearby hill overlooking the airfield itself, after which she finds that the Sonic emblem had disappeared from the flight jacket. And it turns out that the whole event was real, and she had managed to snap a photo of one of Sonic's shoes. She resolves to go looking for him, and that's where it ends. Did I say I'd go over it quickly? That was kinda quick, right? Well, fortunately for time, the Gaiden in the story comic actually cuts the first episode out entirely. Mary Garnet's not even mentioned. This really just serves to make it unclear how the Gaiden relates to the rest of the story comic, though, since there's nothing to imply that the South Island stuff was all a story in a story. Instead, we start with the Air Force test pilot, here given the name Henry Gordon. Mary doesn't give him the Hedgehog nickname here. It's more implied that he got it from other pilots for his flying technique. He and Chuck Yeager, still funny to say, are called to test a couple of experimental planes, and they trade jackets for good luck. Ultimately, though, as we've now learned, Henry does not end up lucky. Chuck Yeager is named the first person to break the sound barrier, despite Henry doing so first, and the Gordon family isn't told what actually happened. About 10 years later, though, after the guilt eats away at him, Chuck Yeager ends up taking Henry's flight jacket to Henry's daughter, Meg. I guess episode 3 takes place in 1957 now? Okay. He tells her the truth, and she starts to wear the jacket everywhere, feeling closer to her father. She even wears it to an air show that she attends to take pictures, and, well, you know what happens next. Plane crash, tragic accident, flames everywhere. At least this Meg doesn't run toward the wreckage. I'm still not over that. Sonic ends up appearing in real life, ends up saving Meg, and she blacks out. There is this odd detail unique to the story comics adaptation where Sonic waves his finger, like on the title screen, which is what Meg's father used to do. Does this mean that Sonic is the reincarnated persona of a dead Air Force test pilot? The end is pretty much the same, though, with Meg waking up in a hospital. We don't get the bit about the photograph and Meg vowing to find Sonic, though. It just ends with his disappearance from the jacket. I gotta say, the cuts to the real-world backstory are really odd to me, on top of the backstory as a whole being odd. Like I mentioned before, nixing episode 1 kind of obscures how the Gaiden is meant to fit into the overall story. That and the idea that Sonic is Henry Gordon reborn is pretty strange. I get that you could make that logical leap in Oshima and Yasuhara's version, but it definitely felt more open to interpretation there. Honestly, I think I prefer the original version of the story, though the artwork in the Gaiden is really well done. If you squint, you can almost see the creation of Adam. Overall, I'm glad I gave the story comics a read. Do I wish they were the official backstory? I'm not so sure. The Sonic the Hedgehog band, as much as I love it, doesn't really lead anywhere. I'm not sure how to feel about how Dr. Eggman was written, and the real-world backstory feels extremely out of place. That doesn't mean I didn't have fun going through them, though, especially since it seems to me like they weren't meant to be taken too seriously. Okay, except the exploding planes, though those seemed pretty serious. It was neat getting some insight into how Sonic and Eggman were originally characterized, as well as how the world shown in Sonic 1 might operate if it weren't confined to just 2 dimensions. There are full fan translations out there, so if you have the time and sleuthing skills to track them down, I'd recommend checking them out. That's pretty much all I have to say for this video. I apologize for the rather long runtime. There ended up being a lot more development-related stuff to cover than I expected. This next video, though, should hopefully be a bit shorter, as we look toward Sega of America's role in all this. After all, I've heard some rumblings that this whole Sonic thing might just find an audience there. Thanks for watching. Later! You know, if you think about it, since Sonic is just the reincarnated Henry Gordon, and Henry Gordon died because his Bell X-1 exploded, which was created by Bell Aircraft founded by Lawrence D. Bell, born in Mentone, Indiana, my own hometown, then that means, in a cosmic sense, my hometown killed Sonic the Hedgehog. Oops.